the CineSnob Podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 336 of the CineSnob Podcast. My name is Cody Villafana, and this week I'm joined by Jocelyn Durand. Kiko is getting closer to returning. We don't have him quite back this week, but hopefully in the next couple of episodes. And yeah, we're just sort of like kind of like playing it by ear here a little bit. We were covering some movies that came out last week, some that come out this week. You know, we're doing the best we can right now. We've been in a state of like not being in town and on vacation, and so yeah, we're trying to be consistent, but it's hard.
People expect it. It's August, or it was August.
September now.
I know the summer is over, but yeah, I think people expect vacations and time off.
Well, they shouldn't expect it from us because we're professionals.
That's right.
And
you're absolutely right.
There is no time off here. This is a 365-day a year job that we have here.
Right.
And it is a job.
Yeah. It's a chore, actually. That's the word I use. Mm-hmm. This is a chore.
An obligation. But we're here. Yeah, I think I'm trying to think here. I'm going to use a little bit of a hint in front of me. I'm trying to think how many more like summer movies we have going before because like every year, and we talk about this every year, so sorry for people who hear me say this every year, but like every year we hit like summer movie season, and then we hit like a dead spot where there's like nothing until the awards movies start trickling in, which is usually like October-ish, like late October, early November. Like when the festivals start to kick in a little bit, like Telluride is happening right now. I think TIFF is in like weeks or something like that.
Well, I saw my first Oscar baity trailer at the movie this week, which I told you about.
The trailers are starting, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at the release calendar, and I think we're basically through the summer stuff, because then you start getting in like late September, you get like the new PTA movie at the end of September. Yes. You get A Big Bold Beautiful Journey.
I feel like that's an odd time to release that. No?
It seems a little early.
Right.
Sometimes the stuff that gets buried in late September gets kind of buried and forgotten about. But, the Smashing Machine, the A24 movie's out in October 3rd. There's some other stuff coming out in October that I think is also awards. So, it starts earlier, like the Springsteen movie's October 24th. That's supposed to be an awards player. So, we'll see. And but I think we're officially like done with with summer movie season. I agree. I think it probably ends next week with like the Conjuring movie.
Oh yeah, Well, no, but that can kind of lead into that's like more fall spooky season. No,
I think
when they start releasing all the.
I think we're a little early for spooky season.
I don't know. No, I honestly feel like it's almost like, when Walmart puts the decorations out early. I feel like we're going earlier and earlier because people are already decorating. I have friends who are already ready for it. So I feel like they're almost like jumping on that, where as soon as it's like summer's over, like September 1st, like let's put out some scary movies for people who want to see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, know, just my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it could be because that is what you get before award season a little bit, is like the spooky season a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, and I think because like the week after is like the Downton Abbey like second or third movie or whatever. I don't think that's summer.
Don't sound so disparaging about the Downton Abbey movie. Hey, Paul Giamatti's in it.
Yeah,
and I'm a big Downton Abbey fan, so
I've never seen a single second of anything Downton Abbey related.
Oh yeah, no, I binged it. I can't remember. I think it was during the pandemic, and saw all the movies and just love it. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and so we've got plenty of stuff to continue to talk about, I think what we can go ahead and do is like get to it. Like I said, we've got some releases from this week, from last week, and why don't we go ahead and get started?
Here are this week's reviews.
So the first movie we're covering this week is Caught Stealing. Caught Stealing is a movie that is directed by Darren Aronofsky, a person who has had such a interesting career.
That's a word for it. I don't know if I would say use interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's been like a weird transition from like prestige big time director to
Well, and even like indie darling at the beginning, he was like sort of like the second coming of like film student, director, kind of like with Pie and Memento. Like everyone was like
not
super.
Memento.
Oh
Requiem
no,
for a
I'm
Dream.
sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Pie and Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah. Yeah, and then like kind of hit, I think, prestige peak with The Wrestler, probably a movie that seemed to kind of like turn a corner for him. And had a bunch of Oscar nominations. And then I think his best movie is Black Swan. That's my favorite, in my opinion. And then it got a little weird where he made the last 3 movies he had made prior to this were Noah, Mother, and God Help Us All, The Whale, a movie that I'm still trying to forget.
Well, didn't he also do The Fountain? That's where he lost me. Yeah, The Fountain was when I was off the Aronofsky train. Like, I was a fangirl at the beginning, despite having accidentally said Memento. But I remember going to The Fountain in the theater and being like, this is so terrible.
Yes, but he did follow it up with The Wrestler and Black Swan.
Right,
so
you're right. He came back a little bit.
He recovered from that.
But still, I feel like that was when we got the first hint of like maybe he isn't this like child genius that everyone was sort of making him out to be, kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think at this point, with Caught Stealing, the interesting thing that we're seeing is his, I would say, his most accessible film up until this point. A movie that he has at least like co-written a bunch of his movies, like Pie, Requiem, Noah, Mother, and this is a movie that he did not write. It was a novel, and the author of the novel wrote the screenplay as well, it's basically a movie about this bartender in New York. It takes place in the 90s, who is like a former baseball player, and basically ends up kind of like unwittingly getting involved in like a criminal enterprise where he's kind of caught in the middle of something, helping a neighbor. And the further he sort of gets into it, the more that people connected to him start to become in danger, and he's trying to find his way out of this predicament where he's got, basically like multiple crime organizations coming after him, and he's sort of like is a little bit in over his head, and tries to work his way out. So the movie stars Austin Butler in the lead role, it's interesting because I feel like he's been an actor that has been super interesting over the last like few years to watch him sort of like, the stories about him like not coming out of character for Elvis and like his voice like permanently changing as a result of that.
Right.
And just kind of like seeming like a new generation of like kind of like weirdo method actors, and like taking roles that were again weird, he's got a super weird part in Dune Part 2. The Bike Riders, he's very sort of like broody and
Brando-y,
yeah. And this, I feel like, is him tapping into something that we haven't seen from him quite yet, which is the ability to kind of like touch a bunch of different areas in terms of, he's part sort of like that whole like broody, moody kind of character, but also he's like tortured by like some trauma in his past. He's also doing like some borderline like slapsticky kind of comedy stuff, and I think he handles it all really well. I think he's very charismatic in this movie. I think he covers the emotional range really well, like able to pull on the more dramatic chops when it's called for, but also keeping the tone light at times. And I think, this goes for a lot of the movie, where I think the casting and the performances are pretty good across the board. He's the best part of it for sure. But I also really like early on, the story is largely about him and Zoe Kravitz, who I think is really good in the movie. There's a part where actor Matt Smith plays like a punk neighbor of his that disappears for a little while and comes back in a way where I think he's super entertaining. And the movie sort of like ebbs and flows to where I feel like there are some like tone shifts that maybe aren't always successful, where I feel like the beginning of the movie is almost like serious to a fault, where it's trying to be kind of like a serious, like sexy drama kind of thing with him and Zoe Kravitz in particular. And then it sort of like gets like really bogged down in like scary criminal type stuff. And then I feel like the last act of the movie is where it finally embraces like being fun, where this is when Matt Smith shows up, brings comic relief. You see again, characters tend to pop in and out of the movie. And so you see, you see towards the end of the sort of, not the end of the movie, the third act, characters played by Vincent D'Onofrio and Liev Schreiber. And I think they bring a lot of like, again, like humor and entertainment and fun to the movie. I just wish that it kind of was like a little bit more fun throughout. I wish it had that tone a little bit more, because it does kind of like weave in and out some like really heavy stuff that I feel like feels out of place. Like he's got, a trauma history, of like almost making it as a baseball player, and like what happened to him is like really serious. And then like, he's like a borderline alcoholic when the movie starts, and goes through like having to stop drinking due to something that happened. And I think the biggest part about the movie that sort of like doesn't work for me is that I think that the narrative itself, like the crime sort of web that it starts to like sprawl out, feels a little bit generic in many ways. But I think the worst part about it is that there's a moment in the movie where there is a reveal of something, like a certain character has a reveal, and that's the movie, or excuse me, that's the point in the movie where it kind of turns for me, where you're like, okay, they're clearly like trying to go out of their way to like try to subvert the audience and give you something that like you didn't expect. Like that's their big shocking moment. And I think that it becomes, as a result, like too predictable. Like it tries so hard to be like subversive that it ends up being predictable, to the point where like the second the end of the movie starts to get set up, you know exactly what's going to happen. And it becomes very, very obvious. So I kind of wish that it didn't have that quality to it, where it gets so sort of like bogged down with trying to be like unique and like twisty and stuff like that, that I just feel like it ends up becoming like overly predictable. And I think also too, like it's just like not the best script in the world, and I feel like it's one of those examples of a movie where like a very average crime script is elevated by, I think, a lot of like really game performers.
The performances,
So I think that like it's a mixed bag, because like is it boring? No, I don't think it's boring at all. I think it's actually pretty entertaining throughout. And weirdly, I was really I was really on board with like the first like 20 minutes, where I think I really like the tone it's going for early on. And then I feel like it hits this middle chunk where the story kind of gets like lame and predictable. And then I feel like it starts to have fun towards the end, but it's like a little too late for that at that point. So it's just a mixed bag, though I feel like there are enough elements of it to where I think it's worthwhile, especially when we're looking at like, again, like I think we talk about like, or we've talked about at least in the past, these sort of like movies or performances where like someone goes from like actor to movie star. And I feel like this is one where you could say that about Austin Butler, where he goes from like actor to movie star in this movie. So and like you saw that with like Glenn Powell, for example, too.
Maybe even backwards, like from movie star to actor, because he's been a star. He was Elvis and he won the Oscar. So it's almost like backwards, like where he went from like the star to like really like this is like acting.
Yeah, he didn't win the Oscar.
Did he not? No, he did.
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah. He
I want to say he did.
No. The winner of that was, I think, Brendan Fraser.
For the whale. Well, that's fascinating for another Aronofsky movie.
Yeah. Brendan Fraser won that year. So,
all right.
So that's kind of my thing where I think, like, again, like going down this like prestige route of doing weird stuff, and then finally, like, it feels like he's carrying a movie in like a way that is entertaining and not just sort of like artsy or whatever. So, I'll go ahead and turn to you.
It's funny because what you were describing is exactly what I was sort of trying to tell you. And so it's funny hearing you say it a different way, but I was texting you during the movie something about how, like, this is like a Coen brother movies, but without the charm. And I think that's exactly what you're hitting on as far as like that funniness that came towards the end. That was missing at the beginning and the middle a lot, because it was sort of trying to do it, but it didn't have the wink to the audience that makes it fun. So then it just becomes kind of just like dark, because they're, you know, doing these horrible things, but there's no funniness to it. It's not like, you know, Flea and the nihilists, but it's sort of trying to be, because it's like the Russian mob and stuff. So I feel like that's exactly what I was trying to say, as far as like, it's almost like a Coen brother movies, but without any of the charm, the first half. It gets it back, like you said, towards the end, but like you also mentioned, it's a little too late. I just feel like Darren Aronofsky is totally lost. I feel like he used to have such a voice, like I said at the beginning of this. He had so much hope for being like, you know, the second coming, and when you look at his movies, they're just like so hit and miss. And more often than not miss, and then I just don't understand how he chooses what he's going to make, because this just doesn't feel to me like a Darren Aronofsky movie. Like, there's some stylish elements, but it's not. It's more like crimey and gritty, and it just felt off for me as far as like the movie as a whole goes. I'm so glad that we both agreed about Austin Butler, because like he is the one thing that is, you know, carrying this movie for a large part of it. Like, he's incredible. And I really was so surprised at how much he's doing and how well he's doing it. So that was really nice to see. I'm actually excited to see what else he does, because he sort of does have that notoriety of being like, you know, method, like you said, with the Elvis mumble, and like I texted you, like he figured out the mumble, and I feel like now that he is beyond it, he can do anything. As far as the twist goes, or the reveal, it's so underwhelming when it happens that it's just so disappointing. I wish they had maybe built to it more, or tried to maybe hide it. I feel like they just kind of like flop it out, like, here it is, like no pomp and circumstance at all. Not helped with the fact that I just think Regina King was not great in this, and it's very apparent because there's so many good performances. You mentioned Vincent D'Onofrio. I feel like he, along with Austin Butler, was my favorite part of this movie. They just are killing it. Like, they just make their characters so nice to watch and fun. And it just could have used some editing. I think that they could have really, really made, like, there's something in this movie. There's something there. There's a good movie in there. I think it needed a lot of help. And so, did I enjoy it? I enjoyed it. I enjoyed a lot of aspects of it. But yeah, just kind of fine, as you said as well.
Yeah. Well, we'll go ahead and get into final thoughts and grades here. I mean, I think for me, you know, the biggest thing is that it just feels a little bit inconsistent. And like you said, I mean, I think that there is a good movie somewhere in here, and I think at times it is really good. Like I said, I was totally on board for the first 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, I see what he's doing here.
Right.
And then I feel like, again, it gets too twisty, too overly, like, needlessly complicated. There's too many characters doing things where it actually gets a little bit hard to track sometimes, because of, like, there's so many bad guys in the movie that you're trying to, like, keep track of the web of everything. But I think that, like, the minute Matt Smith shows up in the third act, like, resurfaces, I feel like from that point forward, it is like, it does hit that sort of like Cohen-y kind of thing. Like even the characters
Sure.
that of like the that like Liev Schreiber and
Vincent play.
Vincent D'Onofrio play, very like Coen brothers coded kind of
100%.
like thing. And
they're kind of sprinkled in throughout, so you definitely like get hints of that. And
yeah, but I mean, again, for me, like even that, like it feels like a tonal shift that doesn't belong with everything that we've seen. So it's almost like
sure.
you're tacking on this like part that doesn't fit, even though it's like entertaining enough.
For sure.
It just feels disjointed. That being said, I think the performances across the board are really solid. Like I said, Austin Butler is the reason to watch the movie, but you get stuff from, you get good stuff from the two previously mentioned. You get good stuff from Zoe Kravitz in the
Carol
movie.
Kane.
Yeah, Bad Bunny.
Oh yeah,
making
Bad
another
Bunny, I
appearance,
forgot.
who's pretty good in
Yeah,
his small part.
surprisingly.
And so for me, like I said, I just feel like, I feel like it gets too bogged down in the narrative to where it tries to be like shocking and subversive, and as a result ends up like becoming too predictable because you feel like they're going to try to throw you a curveball, and so it just sort of becomes predictable. And I feel like it's just a little bit too inconsistent to sort of like carry the entire thing. That being said, it is entertaining. It's Aronofsky's best movie in like a while, in my opinion. So I'm giving it a B-, a very mild recommendation. And your final thoughts and grade?
Same thing. And it's funny you keep mentioning the first 20 minutes because I was as well kind of like digging all of the like early 90s, or I'm sorry, late 90s New York City, Lower East Side stuff. I thought that was really cool. I mean, it's like an atmosphere for sure to not have people who have cell phones. Like he has a janky old, like Nokia kind of cell phone, and he has to use pay phones. And the World Trade Center is like featured prominently a couple times because it's definitely like this time and place that's kind of cool to see. On top of what's going on at the end, I just kind of thought like, what was the point? It's like kind of like, okay, this sort of mistaken identity kind of a movie. And then, just like some bad guys come along, and I don't know, it felt like it just didn't have enough teeth as well. Like, I think it thought it did, but it really didn't kind of, like you said, pull any shocks, or it just was way too predictable. So I am also giving it a B-.
All right. So then we will go ahead and move forward and talk about the next movie that is also being released or was released this week, The Toxic Avenger. So this movie has had a very interesting journey. So the movie is a remake of the 1984 sort of trauma movie that launched, I think, like multiple sequels. A movie that I have not seen before, and maybe to the detriment of like my ability to talk about it and understand it. But this movie originally premiered at Fantastic Fest 2 years ago, in 2023, and the movie like premiered, I think it was like opening night movie maybe, or closing night movie, one of those two, and it premiered to like a hot screening. There was people at the festival loved it, and then it just sort of like went away. The movie apparently had some trouble getting a distributor for a wide release, apparently toward because of like this violence. Again, this movie, it's being released as like the Toxic Avenger unrated. It's like a it's a regular rated R, like, bloodbath movie. So it's nothing like out of the ordinary or anything like that, for sure, in my opinion. But it is a reboot of the original movie, following a janitor who has a freak accident and transforms into a vigilante with like a radioactive mop, and battles a bunch of people, including like CEOs who are like poisoning the town at large or whatever. And it features Peter Dinklage in the main role. So Peter Dinklage is not actually in the suit. He dubbed all of his lines, but he's in the human part early on. And it has a cast of like Jacob Tremblay, Taylor Page, Kevin Bacon, Elijah Wood. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a difficult movie for me to talk about because I don't have a reference point from seeing the original Toxic Avenger. And, my understanding is that it is sort of like a very sort of like intentionally B movie. It is a Troma movie, who I think were kind of known for those types of like low budget B campy kind of things. And so this movie sort of like leans into the B movie nature. Like the tone is like really absurdist and goofy. The violence is like over the top. There is like practical blood splatter, but there's also like CGI violence and stuff like that. And the violence itself is over the top. There's tons of like decapitations, limbs being torn off, people being cut in half, like super people being disemboweled. Like it is sort of like very, very B movie type violence. And for me, I was just never really on the wavelength. There were a couple of times that I laughed out loud, I would say. I think that of the cast, Taylor Page maybe gets the most like laughs throughout and like is the most entertaining. But for me, this is just like a very generic sort of like, it gets like super bogged down with a story that I think is maybe trying to do some sort of like backdoor commentary on like the medical industry and big pharma and like stuff like that, but it just doesn't really land as a satire or anything like that. The violence is sort of like, again, like about average for what you would expect from this. I think that if people have a like affection for like the B movie gore type stuff, people might find it enjoyable, because I do think that it does like capture the essence of that. But for me, the absurdist silliness of it all, there's a lot of like absurdist over the top like jokes. It kind of exists in this like universe where like I don't know if you've seen like those movies where like the TV news stations are like cursing and like people are like very over the top sort of like it's like dystopian and stuff like that.
Right.
And just for me, it just doesn't really work. I just was not on the wavelength of it. And I think, again, if I had maybe a little bit more appreciation for the original, or I was like more of a B movie kind of fan, I may have appreciated it more. But I think I just found it to be kind of like annoying and grating, and it just like didn't work for me. So I'm gonna and you weren't able to see this, so I'm just gonna give my final thoughts here. So yeah, I think that like it brings the appropriate B movie, bloodshed, but I don't think that there's anything to write home about beyond that. And so for me, this is a C-, not an enjoyable experience for me personally. Yeah, and so we will go ahead and move right along, and we will get to the next movie that we both saw, which is Eden. This is going to be one that I might leave to you to talk about, because this is a story that you are familiar with,
right?
In a story that I was not familiar with prior to seeing the movie. So I'll let you kind of talk about that in a minute. But
sure.
But this is a movie directed by Ron Howard, and it is a movie that is the true story of some settlers who arrive on an island in the Galapagos. And this is in between World War I and World War II, where a doctor and his, I don't know if it's like girlfriend, or I don't think they're married. I don't think it matters either. But basically a doctor ends up going to this island to sort of settle. She has MS, and they're trying to like cure her MS, and they end up being joined by some other people who are like followers of his, that show up basically to help like get away. They were going to put their son, it's a couple and their son, so the initial couple is played by Jude Law and Vanessa Kirby. The couple that shows up is played by Daniel Bruhl and Sydney Sweeney, who show up with their son, or his son, who is also has I think he has tuberculosis. And they were gonna like get him medical care, but it ended up being too expensive, so they come to the island to try to cure him as well. And then and so there's like some tension there, and then they are eventually crashed by another person played by Ana de Armas, who plays the Baroness, who is trying to build a hotel on the island. And you end up getting this sort of like triangle of people who are like not able to trust each other, who like the Jude Law and Vanessa Kirby characters try to like want them all gone in the island to themselves. Daniel Bruhl and Sydney Sweeney are just trying to like create a life, and then Ana de Armas is trying to pit them against each other, and it becomes this sort of like back and forth, like passive aggressive and kind of thing where it just starts to get more in depth, darker and darker and darker, and so on and so forth. So another
Great
example,
job.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have you add context to it because it is sort of like an infamous story in certain circles.
Right.
And I, to be honest, I did not know anything about this story. I think that it is an interesting story, just sort of like inherently when you kind of hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that the movie is written in the most interesting way.
I totally agree.
Where I feel like the movie is just kind of boring. I don't think that they do a good job of making Jude Law's character into enough of an interesting character, because he seems to be this guy who is like really obsessed with becoming like a famous sort of like philosopher, but you don't really get much about like him and what he's trying to do, and like also he seems to be like slowly untethering from reality a little bit, and I don't know that they give enough like background and story behind that, or the relationship he has with Vanessa Kirby. I feel like the characters played by like Daniel Bruhl and Sydney Sweeney, they're just like wet blankets of characters. I just don't think that they have like no personality, no like anything interesting about them. They are just like a basic German couple, and like that's it. You get a little bit of like Sydney Sweeney had like autonomy and like her being her own person, but like that's all you get. By far, to me, the most interesting character and the most interesting performance of the movie is Ana de Armas, as the Baroness, who like truly gets so much out of so little. And I'm like really, really impressed with her performance in this movie, where she's playing this character that is sort of like, how can I put this? She's okay. Don't slut shame. She's promiscuous, and
you mean sex positive before sex positivity was a thing?
Yes, but she's using it to her advantage, right?
Right.
So she's like wielding her like sexuality to get what she wants, and so but she's like putting on an act, like in terms of like she's acting more like dumb or flighty than she really is. She's really like scheming behind closed doors. She she really tries to like play up like her being high class, and it's just such an interesting tightrope that she walks. I think she does really great work when she's finally confronted like a little bit later in the movie by someone who is like a very wealthy person shows up on the island later, and that interaction where she sort of like breaks a little bit because she's like a little caught and found out.
Yeah,
and, like,
he can't.
He's
not working.
He's not buying her bullshit. Yeah. Like I think she's doing like incredible work in that scene, and in like just truly like a really captivating performance. With like not a lot of like really great material, because I feel like again the movie is just like boring. I feel like it sort of like doesn't give you enough it doesn't give you enough like interesting characters. I feel like the narrative of like the back and forth, the sort of like triangle of trying to scheme and plot and stuff like that is like mildly interesting, but then it just gets really circular. You get really bogged down by the Ana de Armas character, like in like her two little boy toys, like getting like pitting those guys against each other. I don't think is like super interesting and a good usage of time.
Yeah.
And then I think once Jude Law's character starts to become untethered, it stops feeling realistic. I think a lot of it feels realistic, and that kind of feels like a bridge too far a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's like a really interesting story told in a very boring way.
Yeah.
But though I feel like the performances are decent across the board, though I like a giant gold star to Ana de Armas, who I think is like really, really good in the movie. So yeah, I'll go ahead and pass to you, and I'll let you provide a little bit more context of like what this story kind of like your history with it.
Right. No, you did a great job. But so there's an episode of My Favorite Murder, and I really feel like it was right when they were starting to get really popular. It became almost legendary as far as like stories that they tell go, because if you don't know, it's a murder podcast, a true crime podcast. And the host, Karen Kilgariff, tells this story, and she's an incredible sort of storyteller. Like whenever she reads a story, it's always like better, you know? Mm-hmm. So she tells this story and she just does it so well. And I feel like she really, I think that's what's the beauty of like, you know, storytelling compared to like filmmaking. You know, you can really kind of draw out the really interesting parts, and like when you hear about the Baroness, like it's just insanity, like that this is a real story. That's why that episode is so popular, because it's like just this insane story. And like you said, that somehow Ron Howard managed to tell in an incredibly boring way. I mean, like it still has all the sort of fun and sex of Ana de Armas and the Baroness coming in and being carried around on a donkey and insisting that music played and all that. Mm-hmm. But that he doesn't do a good job of like really highlighting the like insanity and the bizarreness of this woman coming in and sort of like infiltrating this like sort of utopia that was being built there. And I don't know if that's because he got bogged down by like, you know, the truthfulness of the story. Maybe he was more trying to tell it in a truthful way and historically accurate way, because I don't even know if the My Favorite Murder, how accurate a lot of it is. And they don't really go into any of the things that the movie does. They don't have to. That's not the fun part. Like the fun part is that this crazy Baroness comes in and starts to try to make this hotel and really just kind of ruins the piece. Mm-hmm. And like you said, they really don't do a good job of showing that, of like, I mean, Ana de Armas does. Like, she's incredible. Like you said, she is just like literally swinging for the fences. She's the best part of this movie. And the rest, as you said, it's just like sort of boring. And I have to say that Sydney Sweeney, I mean, nothing, you know, I'm not like pro her or anti her. Of course, it's like a political thing now, whether you like her or not. But her German accent is terrible.
Look, can we just like, look, let me just say this. Terrible. This is a huge pet peeve of mine where like they're speaking English. Just let them talk in their regular accents. Why are you giving them a German effect? Well, especially when they're talking in privately and they're German people. Like, why even bother with the accents? Just let them talk with like regular or a British accent or something like that. There's no need to give them.
But on the other hand, Ana de Armas does an excellent job of doing sort of a universal sort of posh accent. So you know, we say that, but then someone who in the right hands, it can really add a lot of sort of not just credibility, but a little bit of like mystery to the character, because you don't really quite know where her accent's from. And then on the other hand, you have Sydney Sweeney, who's literally like fighting for her life to say words. I'm sorry, she's not a bad actress, but she has a super particular way of speaking. So she is not the type of person that can do, you know, accent work. Like, she is not there. Like, that was a very bad decision on whoever's part decided to do that.
This movie had different casting.
Interesting.
And people had to drop out. So
I just feel like maybe she should have worked a little harder with a dialect coach, because it's embarrassing. It's really bad and hard to watch. And just her character in general, like you mentioned, just kind of wet blankets, and they try to make it a little interesting, and it's really not, and it's not working, and everything about it really just kind of killed the movie for me. Anything that Anna was doing, like that was the highlight, honestly. And I could have seen a lot more of that and a little less of everything else, and it could have been a shorter movie. Again, it could have been an under 2-hour movie if they had just trimmed the fat and made it, you know, a fun, really sexy sort of thriller. And instead, it's like sort of this historical piece with a little fun and true crime and stuff. But yeah, it was just, I don't know. I hate to say like caught stealing again. There was a good movie in here, but it just got really bogged down by a lot of really boring stuff. So you haven't given me a grade yet. I was about to. Great. Wait, no, you did. Didn't you give it a grade?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no. So, yeah, final thoughts and grades. So, again, I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. I think it is an inherently super interesting story that is told in like the most boring way possible. I think that Ana de Armas is a highlight of the movie. She's really, really great in it. I feel like the other performances are fine. I mean, I think Jude Law is fine in the movie.
Right.
Vanessa Kirby is good.
Mhm.
I just feel like there's just not enough interesting characters. Like, you have one character that is like sucking up all the charisma and interestingness, and you have like nothing left for anyone else.
Yeah,
And
pretty
so
much.
I feel like, and it also doesn't have the sort of like true crime intrigue either. I don't think so. Like, had you not said that this was like a very famous true crime story, I would have never known that it was like perceived as such. So
Mhm.
yeah, for me, I just think it falls short. I'm giving it a C, and I think it only gets that high because De Armas's performance is so good.
Yeah. You mean you wouldn't have known as such from the movie that you watched, right?
Right. Yeah.
But if you like heard it on a piece of paper, it would be like, what? It's a really kind of like once in a lifetime type of a stories. And even the parts at the end when they were talking about like the true story, the lady who still has a hotel there on the island, the Sydney Sweeney character, it's like, man, I just feel like it was in the wrong hands with Ron Howard. He tried to make it more historically accurate instead of like really leaning into the fun and the, like you said, the true crime aspects and the real like insanity of this like, larger than life character. So I was really excited. I enjoyed a lot of it, and I hate to say that. I mean, it wasn't a bad movie. It just could have been so much better. So I'm giving it a C plus.
Okay, great. And then we have our last movie that we're covering, which is called Relay, a movie that I unfortunately was not able to see, but you were. So yeah, I'll go ahead and turn to you to get a little bit more about Relay and your thoughts. I mean, I was interested in the movie because
I know. I'm disappointed
yeah,
that you didn't get to.
Yeah, it's
I
directed
think
by
you would have
David.
really enjoyed it. Sorry.
David McKenzie, who
Right.
directed two movies I really love. Hell or High Water is probably the one he's most known for, but he also directed his movie called Start Up that I really, really like that nobody's seen. But yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell us more about Relay?
Yeah, so I was disappointed you didn't get to see this because I thought you would have really enjoyed it. And I am also a fan of Hell or High Water. I remember when I watched it, I was so blown away by just, an average sort of Western sort of bank robber type of movie. You expect it, and then it just like kind of really turned that genre on its head a bit. And I feel like he did the same thing here with that sort of like, those like 90s thriller type movies. Like, gosh, there was a few of them. Like, I'm trying to think, like the Net and Pelican Brief, I think, is another one. There was like in the 90s, there was a string of these like kind of thriller, technology driven sort of thrillers. And I think what he did here was he really made it current and did a lot of what he did with Hell or High Water, where he just kind of like took the fun elements of it and really kind of did unique things with it. So you have Riz Ahmed in the lead role, who, I'm a huge fan of. I mean, he's just an excellent actor. And he's basically, so the tagline is he's a bribe broker who facilitates deals between corrupt companies and their threats. So he's basically protecting whistleblowers, but he's not just protecting the whistleblower. He represents both people, the people who have really intense information that can, kill a company. And then he's also protecting the company. So he works as a middleman between the two. And what's kind of fun about it is, the first half of the movie, he is really in his element. Like, you're watching him and how he works, setting up this negotiation basically between Lily James and this company that she previously worked for. And it's so fun. Like, he is doing like, he has like costumes. He's just like all the things that he's using, all the tools that he has are just really fascinating and to see the sort of the people who are working to protect the company trying to figure it out and trying to be one step ahead of him, but obviously he's really thought of everything. It's really great to watch. I will say that halfway through there's a bit of a twist or a reveal, And after that, you kind of lose any of that funness of him being like the expert and, just that was the fun part for me, was to see him really in his element and outsmarting all these people. So he kind of basically trips a little bit. And then the rest of the movie, he's just kind of tripping and trying to get back to where he was at the beginning. And there's, so like I said, there's a bit of a twist, which I don't necessarily think it was bad. It's just, I don't know how to talk about it without giving too much away, but it seems not authentic to the character. Basically, he, of course, starts like falling for Lily James, which I think they do well. I was a little like, oh God, please don't make this like a romance type movie. But they handle it well. And then the twist comes after that. And then it kind of loses a lot of the realistic elements, I will say. It ends fine. And, I saw that the screenplay was the Blacklist of 2019, the screenplay that like, the people bid on it for like the best screenplay that hasn't been made.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's a great screenplay. But I don't know. I'm really torn about it, and I wish you had seen it, because I feel like a lot of times when we talk about it, then I kind of really figure out how I feel. So I think there's a lot of excellent elements about this. Riz Ahmed is amazing. They do a great job of setting up his character and why he does what he does, and the whole thing seems really realistic until it doesn't. But by then, I honestly didn't care, because I thought it was just a good time, and you don't see movies like this often anymore. So yeah, I thought it was an enjoyable experience, great performances, and Lily James was fine. I'm not gonna be, I don't like her, but
I know you don't. Yeah,
she was pretty good though. I think she did a great job.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and then your grade for the movie.
Let me see what I gave it. Yeah, I really feel like this is a bit of a throwback to those like 90 thrillers that I talked about, which you don't see anymore. And especially in like this technology driven era, it's kind of cool. So I didn't even mention, but he uses the relay service for people who are hard of hearing, basically, because it's like completely untraceable. So that's sort of another interesting element that the movie relies on. That's why it's called that. So some really, I think, interesting elements, some great performances, and I'm giving it a B+. I think the ending is a little unrealistic, but like I said, by the time you get there, you're just like on for the ride and willing to overlook that maybe it wasn't as good of an ending as it could have been. So yeah. B+.
All right, B+. All right, that's going to do it for this week. So next week, we've got a slew of movies coming out. We have the big sort of like, well, it's not a big theatrical movie, but the wide theatrical release we have is a movie called Splitsville, a movie from Neon starring Adria Arjona and Dakota Johnson. And in addition to that, we've got some smaller movies. We have one called Lurker. We have a movie called Twinless. And we have a movie called The Threesome. And and you know what also might come out?
Oof, it's a lot of movies.
I think Highest to Lowest hits Apple TV.
Oh, that's right. September 5th.
Yeah, on Friday. Yeah. So it's going to be a busy, busy time here.
And that's the Kurosawa remake by Spike Lee.
Yes, it is the remake of High and Low, starring Denzel Washington, directed by Spike Lee. All right, so if you want to reach us, find us at CineSnob across all social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can actually, if you are interested, you can find, actually, I don't know if you can find it. Kiko interviewed Ron Howard for Eden. I don't know if that is up anywhere. I'll have to ask him, but that is something that exists.
What was Kiko's grade?
I don't remember. I don't think he loved it.
Okay.
But yeah. And yeah, yeah, please rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts and give us those 5 stars. We would really appreciate it. And I think that's it. Anything else to add?
Nope.
Well said. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit cinesnob.net. See you next week.